Welcome. Can you hear me? Is this on? Oh, that's so weird hearing your own voice. You guys love it. It's like, that's what I sound like. It's kind of the worst. I always thought I sound way cooler. Should go a little deeper. It sounds better. A voice are like better. I'm not a voice actor. Can't do this. Can't do this on command, you know? Well, we're a little early, but I thought there's gonna be a bigger crowd for, this is Mattel. Oh, this is Tweeterhead, okay. I work for Tweeterhead. So yeah, thanks guys for coming out. I think this is streaming online too, so we have a packed house here, which is great. Hope they don't see that on the camera because I'm totally lying, which is awesome. But thanks guys for coming to the panel. I've gotten to meet a bunch of you guys already, which is awesome. But my name's David Igo. I work for Tweeterhead. I'm their creative director. And we are working on He-Man and Masters of the Universe stuff, in case some of you guys were curious. So, yeah. I love He-Man. Actually, Snout Spout's my favorite, but He-Man's cool too. All right, I know. Where is that Snout Spout guy? So, we're working on a statue line that we have been. Oh, actually, first I want to give a huge thank you to Val and the whole PowerCon team for putting on an awesome show. I know we've all been dying for some human contact in the last year and a half, and this is my first convention since things have kind of loosened up a little bit. So, just can we give a huge applause to those guys because they freaking roll. So, thank you, team. Thank you, Val. So, yeah, so we're working on Masters of the Universe statues, and we called it Legends. We want to give it a brand name because it has a little bit of a history as to how we got here. So, these are some of our pieces that we have at our booth, minus two of them. Skeletor and TEELA were stuck in China, so we had 2D cutouts of them, because why not? So, my experience is I originally worked at Sideshow Collectibles for 10 years as an art director, and about 2014, we were able to work on He-Man statues. So childhood Dave Igo was stoked. So my boss gave me the challenge at the time of, if you can make He-Man look cool, we'll make the rest. So started out with He-Man, and over the next couple of years, we worked on Skeletor, She-Ra, Evil-Lyn, and there's also a variant of Evil-Lyn. Well, that is the variant. There's another Evil-Lyn. And then at one point, Chad Colbank, who owns the company Twitter that I now work for, he wanted to continue the line, and Sideshow, we had to put our focus on other properties at the time. And, you know, he volunteered to work on Orko as the next piece in the line. So it's kind of a creative partnership. And at a certain point, he wanted to keep going, but it was kind of hard to figure certain things out. We started a HORDAK concept piece. And actually, before I jump too far into the woods, like, what I want to talk about this line in particular is this was my passion to be. As a kid, I love this stuff, but what would I want to see in a live action movie or a video game or something like that? How would I translate these awesome characters in this property into something that felt a little more pushed for the screen? So that's where like I was approaching this whole thing, and I worked with the very first concept artist I worked with on this thing is some of you guys might know him. It's weird to pronounce it, probably easier to read it, but Stjepan Sevic. He's a awesome artist. He does a lot of covers for the comic books. He did the first initial designs for He-Man Skeletor. He killed it, and that set up the whole Legends universe, in my opinion. So eventually Chad would continue this line with Tweeterhead, with Orko, and then he asked me to help him continue the line after hours. I got permission. It was cool because Sideshow sells stuff, so I was helping him on HORDAK. So eventually, that kind of overlapped with the license expiring with Sideshow, and then Chad wanted to pursue the license himself. So HORDAK was the first one that we did underneath Tweeterhead as a solo effort, which is awesome. And again, this was another passion project of mine, trying to figure out how do you take HORDAK, and there's obviously interpretations of him. You got the comic, you have the cartoon, you have the toy. Every HORDAK looks a little different, just like my favorite MER-MAN. We'll go over that a little bit later. So the image on the left was kind of the main vision for HORDAK. And then obviously, I want to do a little nod for the cartoon fans, so it's like for Filmation fans, so we worked in like what we call the robotic vampire head for the exclusive swap out. So you can have the best of both worlds. Initially, we didn't plan the variant that you guys have probably seen at the booth. I didn't actually include in the slides because as artists do, we procrastinate. So this slide is missing from this panel. But just some more detailed shots to show like all the effort we put into trying to take this HORDAK, push a little bit further, make it work for what would hopefully people would want to see in a live action movie or video game or TV show. TV show would be awesome. 10 seasons, 10 episodes. I don't know, man. If there's someone at Netflix that's here, maybe they can make that happen. So he also comes with a fabric cape. We want to keep that consistent with He-Man, Skeletor. They had fabric capes that are removable. That way you can have like your version of HORDAK'S. You know, some had it, some didn't. So we want to give that. The base is, you know, inspired by the Fright Zone. One of, you know, various different artworks on that too. So we worked in the cool green rocks and metallics and techy, funky stuff, and then the cool Horde emblem on the base, on his chest, on the staff. It's kind of like over branding, you know? It's like my name, my name, my name, my name, my name. But it's cool. I love it. So after HORDAK, this wasn't really planned. It just kind of happened. Chad and I were like, let's do the little minion guy that came with the original toy and just do it as a separate little standalone piece. These pieces are kind of expensive. HORDAK, I think, retailed at the time for $475 before shipping, which, as you guys know, costs a lot. So we thought doing the minion as a separate companion piece would be fun. People like dragons anyway, so even if you don't like, you know, maybe this is your gateway drug into the He-Man universe. You don't know what this world is. You see this cute little bat dragon, you're like, I want that. I like Game of Thrones. That's cool. So we did him. He's a little fun dude. He's at the booth too. Cute little guy. Trying to take that, again, like just that little plastic toy. And also the classics, what the Four Horsemen did with the classics figure was awesome. And then just try to like, what would that look like in this world? After him, we approached TEELA with some selective shots here. Trying to find, really with TEELA, the balance of beautiful and badass. We didn't want to make it a pinup model because TEELA's got to go like, you know, fisticuffs with all these like bros. So it's like, yeah, I want to make sure she can keep up with the, you know, just kick some ass too in this world. So we want to make her definitely look as badass as possible. And this is one where we try to, there's a lot of interpretations of TEELA as well, all these figures. That's one reason why I love this property. There is no like, this is the version. Obviously, everyone has their favorite. But with TEELA, we want to bring in a little bit more of the classic, a little bit of the 2000X. The, I don't think I include the shot. Gosh, dang. But the exclusive was a swap out Staff of Ka, her Cobra staff, which is awesome too, to give the classic fans something too. But we gave her two portraits. She has one with the ponytail scene here. She has one more classic Filmation updo style. But, and then the one thing we really wanted to do with this one was a nod to the original Grayskull playset with the little like dungeon sticker. So we got the little dungeon monster creeping out of the back there. That was fun. This is actually a whole different team of artists. Like one guy worked on her body, one guy worked on the props, one sculptor worked on the base, and one sculptor worked on just the monster. We had like 5 sculptors work on this. That's not normal, but it was fun. Always trying to get the best results. So this is kind of a comp I put together to show all the pieces together. These weren't actually photographed together. I think a couple were, but this is me just using Photoshop to kind of show you like how the line started and where it got to and what it's at right now. You can actually own any one of these pieces. Some pieces are older, so you have to go to eBay or whatever. And Minion is the first one. He's kind of stuck in the shipping container debacle that's happening across the globe right now, I'm sure. You know, we all wanted our exclusives from PowerCon, but there's certain things out of our control like hurricanes and earthquakes and shipping containers. So it's fun, they stuck in a container. But we brought 3 with us, and a little news on that later. So these are all you can kind of own right now, but just to show the breadth of the line, showing some good guys, some badass chicks, Orko, a little bat dragon guy. It's fun, love this line. So going from here, it's like, what could be the future? Like, what are the next characters? Everyone has an idea of like what they want their next character to be. If I had $1 for every person that came up to me, was like, you should do Web Store next, you should do Whiplash next, you should do Snout Spouts next, Clamp Chat. It's like, it's hard to choose favorites. I think it's pretty obvious a couple that we should do next, and they're actually at the booth. But we have Sir Trapjaw, Sir MER-MAN, and then the reveal of a super, super, super rough early progress Beastman, which we haven't shown yet. So I want to look at, these are my top 3 guys. I love seeing them together. I hate biasing towards the bad guys in this universe, but they're just so cool. You know, it's so hard not to want to do these guys. So these are all various stages of work in progress sculptures. MER-MAN's the furthest along. He's actually a finished sculpture now. What you see at the booth is actually probably 90% done. The base is actually a little bit more done in this one. You can see the Snake Mountain motif worked into each one. We want to make it like the bad guys are rallying at Snake Mountain to go out and like just start a war, right? So each one has a little bit of a Snake Mountain motif at the bottom. Each one will have a little bit of a unique element on the top. So they tie together, but then they're all unique at the same time. So MER-MAN, hard to see from this image, but you can see it at the booth a little bit better too, is he's actually stepping up out of a pool. It was inspired by in the 2000X show, you know, like his first reveal is he just comes up out of like this mud pit, and you're just like, what is that? So that'd be cool, like the guy of this, you know, ocean lore just swimming up, coming out, and it's like, this is how I get to Snake Mountain. But this is something that we really pride ourselves in, is working out rough poses with each character together. We want to make sure they work individually, which is the most important, and then also as a set. Because, you know, kind of it happens, but sometimes some poses work great for every character. Then when you put them all together, like, every figure has the same leg up. Very guilty of that. Not acting like I'm some genius up here, even though I am the creative director. But it's fun to make sure they all work together. Actually, Trapjaw, we had an initial pose, wasn't really working. He's actually taking the longest to do, but we want to make sure we got him right. We did a repose about halfway through, which you don't usually do, but we want to make sure we got him right. So I'll talk about each one of these except for Beastman. So this is your last little shot at Beastman, a little teaser announcement. But I want to talk about MER-MAN first, the Ocean Warlord, the next in the Legends line. And we really, when I did an initial concept sculpt of this guy, we do everything digital. So every single piece we do, we sculpt in a program called ZBrush. It makes life a lot easier in a lot of ways, a little bit harder in other ways. Like when you work digital, you can work on fidelity, you can change size, you can do all these things, but you don't know what it looks like until you 3D print it. So that's always like a challenge, is it looks one way in the computer, when you 3D print it, you're like, the head's too small, the head's too big, his legs are short. Like, it's weird. You have all these tools you can use digitally, but at the same time, you just don't really know until you can hold it in your hand. So when you're physically sculpting something, you can see that interactively as you're working on it. So it's something we always try to be mindful of, is let's push this to a point, let's test it, let's see how it looks. Sometimes we forget and we have to fix things on the back end, but it's part of life. So what I want to do is, before I get into the nitty gritty of him, I want to talk about like the evolution of MER-MAN over the years. He's my favorite character in the MOTU universe. And as a kid, I had the original mini comic, the toy, and I watched the cartoon. And they look like 3 different characters. And I kind of loved it about that. My favorite Marvel character is Venom. You can draw him a million different ways. He's still Venom. You know, it's just I like cool monsters. So when we were working on Legends, we always try to line up, to me, what are the quintessential like evolutions of character, which is the original cross-cell art for the back of the, you know, / mini comic, the vintage toy, the Filmation show, the classics toy, 2000X, and how would our MER-MAN look next to those? Does it look like a natural evolution? Does it look like we changed something just for the sake of changing something? We want to make sure everything makes sense. We don't want to just because it looks cool, you know? Even though that's important, you want to make sure, whoops, sorry. You want to make sure people see it and they go, that looks cool. But then there's meaning behind the coolness, right? So we always try to check ourselves and make sure we're not going too far away from the source material. I've been very guilty of that over the years. My 3 years at Channel Giant, my 10 years at Sideshow, even now at Tweeterhead, I still find myself every once in a while, you need to re-anchor yourself and look at your North Star and make sure you're not getting too far away from it. At the end of the day, we're making these for MOTU fans and drawing in hopefully new fans as well. We're not, you know, it's always fun as an artist, like put your fingerprints on something, but you don't want to do it just cause. You want to make sure you're pushing this in the right direction. So this is kind of part of also where we work with Mattel to make sure they're on board with our vision as well, because they've been extremely supportive and awesome. It's been a great 1.5-year relationship so far. They just ask, hey, show some rough art, some reference, give us some notes on what you're thinking, because our 2D art always looks one way and then gets pushed when we change things in 3D. ZBrush and digital sculpting is great because it allows you, and for better or worse, the ability to tweak things until the end. And when you have a production schedule, it's horrible when you can do that, but as an artist, you love to be able to tweak things until the end, because as artists, you're never happy with your own work, especially when you're very self-critical. You hate it, you hate it, you hate it, you hate it, and then it's done, you know? So it's fun every once in a while, you're like, hey, I don't hate this, I love what I'm doing. And that's a lot of this. So these are kind of like examples that we'll put together from Mattel, the MER-MAN's legend, the costume look, kind of the 2 main heads we're going for, level of detail. You can actually see that bottom middle image. That's actually a rough sculpt I did 3 years ago in ZBrush to kind of like, this is what I would maybe do with MER-MAN's look, and the collar was inspired by like, you know, a shark's teeth and the rose. And I wanted MER-MAN to look like everything was sharp on him. I wanted, like, if he's gonna fight you, if you touch him, you're dead. That's like how badass this guy should be, is like, when you think of the ocean's beautiful, but have you guys seen any of those, like, the deadliest animal on the planet? They're all in the sea, and they're all sharp, and they're all poisonous. I wanted MER-MAN to be all that combined. Like, every part of him, don't want to touch that. So, even the sword. You know, so this is actually the finished sculpt. So this has evolved a bit from the piece of the booth. This is the finished base. And you can see there's a little, where's my, do I have a mount? Yeah, a little creeper coming up out of the pool, little tentacle guy coming, yeah, there he is, coming up out of that pool he's stepping out of and wrapping around. Thought it'd be a fun little ad. So I think I've talked to a couple of you guys. I've come by the booth. I'm like, there's gonna be a tentacle here. So I'm really excited about that. But again, like Snake Mountain motif, we'll make sure it all ties together, but still feels unique. So the artist on this one is Amilcar Fong. He's amazing. He helped me co-design this thing. Nate Barch also helped us do the 2D artwork. I love Nate's name. He always, like, everyone butchers it. I think Kevin Smith was even like, he did the poster for Revelation. Kevin Smith was like, Nate Barch? He has the best last name ever. It's horrible. My last name is Igo, just 3 letters, easy. But Nate helped with this thing as well. And yeah, and you can see the sword design here as well. I want to take the classic toy, you know what some people call the corncob sword, take that texture, the shape, push the shape a little bit into like different sword shapes. We actually worked on I love the original vintage toy as a little like handle cover thing. I'm horrible at terminology. I just make up words all the time. So we want to like play a nod of that too with the cover over the hand. And we wanted that to be like parts bone or sawfish. You know, those like little T-sticks. So it's like sawfish meets underwater blacksmith. I know that seems impossible, but I like in my fantasy world, there's an underwater blacksmith. I don't know how they do it, but they just do. There's lava under there. Magic. Love it. Magic. And then we want to find with MER-MAN a balance of texture too, because you can't just like over detail everything. You want like your eye to be able to find a place to rest, move around a little bit. So we really push the texture in the costume armored elements, and then we want to find key areas where we can push the skin texture on him as well. So he has like a subtle leather texture. If you look at certain fish, like they're not all scale. Some of them are just like a leather. So he's leather with certain harder rows of scale. So we want to find a cool balance. Then his belt, you know, we have a couple old nirnies and knickknacks on there. Like he has a piece of a bone that looks like it could be a hand saw. I don't know, because he already has a sword that's a saw, but you know, can't have enough saws. So that's what MER-MAN looks like. And I'm very happy. Can't wait till he's done and painted. He's getting printed really soon, so that'll be fun. Oh, and for his armor, we didn't want it to feel like it was cobbled just from elements he found under the sea. We wanted, again, the underwater blacksmith, but also his shin guards and his arm guards are kind of like formed around him like a shell, so they don't actually fully close. They just look like they're pressure fit, and that was a fun little nod. We want it to look like, you know, when you look at a shell, it just doesn't really fully close, so it's a fun little thing. Research is fun. So next is trap jaw. This is actually pushed a little bit more than what you see out there. I can barely tell a difference, so I'm not going to assume anyone's like, oh my god, you pushed the skin texture a tiny bit more. But I think that's all that happened. But he's at like the 90 or 80% stage in Sculpt right now. The base is still pretty rough. So my favorite statue of this guy, and my favorite version of trap jaw is the 2000X. Like what the 4 Horsemen did. I have the NECA statue sitting at my house, and the whole time I was working this thing, I was scared. Anyone that tells you they like jump into something they love with confidence, usually like there's always some fear because you don't want to like let it down. You don't want to screw it up, do it wrong. And this guy, I was like, I can't screw this up, and that stressed me out. This guy actually took longer than any other project I've worked on in Sculpt. The sculptor is Gio Nakapil. He's awesome. He has a full-time job, so he does this after hours with me. Like I said, we reposed him halfway through because I'm an idiot, but it's fun. But this guy started same way MER-MAN did. We had a rough idea, and we had to put together some rough thoughts of like, how can we push this guy and make him work in the real world? So looked at, again, all the evolution of trap jaw. And what you can see here on the right is some rough 2D art that we did, and you can see how much this has changed from this to the sculpture, but also what has stayed true to that original idea. Again, sometimes we start with the concept art. I call it concept art because it's a concept. It's not like hard-lined is exactly what it is. Some people work that way. It's awesome. Not saying that's not how to work. Whoops, I keep hitting this microphone. I'm so animated. I need to keep my hands down. I like working with artists, and sculptors are also designers themselves because I always feel like we can start somewhere and always improve it as it evolves. So I love working with concept artists that work a little bit rough. They have ideas. It inspires the sculptors. We can evolve things a bit more in 3D. Again, looking at the evolution of the cross-cell to the vintage, filmation, classics, 2000X, what are like the key elements? He has this awesome belt, this huge belt with things on it, right? So it's like, you can't see in the art, but there's something we figured out in the 3D. Instead of having these attachments for like his gun arm and his claw arm, I just wanted that arm to look like a Swiss Army knife of death. Like, it's just like, it's all there, just cannon, stab, knife, thing, blade, sword, laser, cannon thing, you know, have it all there. But actually, let me talk about that with some other stuff too. But you can see one thing I want to do is bring back in this line, I want to kind of have some through lines with every character. I really love the classic like loincloth that all the toys had. I want to bring like that back into it. With our He-Man, we gave him a cool little loincloth, layered leather thing. With Skeletor, we did the same thing. Hordak, we did the same thing. I'm like, I want to do that with Trapjaw. I want to give him a cool, big-ass belt buckle with a wicked skull on it, big, like, cool loincloth, bunch of stuff. So that's the idea for like the look. And then we're like, all right, what's the pose? And this is something I put together as, oh, there's more of the look too, and the pose. All right, here we go. So for me, the language of Trapjaw, visually with his armor, I was like, what could we do that's different, but not so different it feels unnatural? So I love Lord of the Rings. I talked about it earlier. I think a lot of us love Lord of the Rings. I loved what Weta did with the orc armor and Sauron and everything. I wanted to feel like if they still existed and then they got to like technology, like steampunk with a little bit of geary stuff, like what would that be? So we used a lot of that visual language to help inspire how we can make the gun look different. We want it all to look handmade. Like again, like it's a fantasy world, lots of magic. You don't have to explain everything, but you need enough to make it feel grounded in some sort of like believability. So I wanted this to all look like handmade, weird, cool armor stuff. So a lot of Lord of the Rings. When you actually, the original pose, his gun arm was up, and you can kind of see the gun arm, like all the spikes and stuff, it kind of is inspired by Sauron's helmet. That might have been an accident or intentional, not totally sure. And then, so we had a look and idea that we came up with in design that helped the sculptor, Geo, go, I see where we can go with this now. It helps him to be able to, we provide a reference to the sculptor, but at the same time, you want them to have a little bit of ownership too, so he's able to do a little bit of his own research and figure things out. And then the initial pose of the arm up wasn't really working, so I went back and kind of looked at some of the main Trapjaw like art I gravitated towards, other statues that have been done, because, you know, you want to be, it's not the most important thing, but it's cool as a bonus if the statue of Trapjaw you get, if you have the other Trapjaws, if they all look a little unique, you know? Worst case scenario, or worst case, the priority should be what's best for this statue. Don't compromise too much of it because of what other people did 10 years ago. If they did something great, do it again, just different in your own way. You know, there's no reason to change things just cause. I don't like just cause. It has to always be for a reason. So I pulled all this reference, trying to get feels for how he is, how he moves, how he looks, what people, so when they see it, they'll instantly think, oh, that's a Trapjaw pose. Because that's the feedback I got from the sculptor, my boss Chad, some other people when I showed them the original Trapjaw. I was like, it feels cool, but it doesn't feel like Trapjaw. We're gonna use it for something else later, so it all worked out for the best. So when I put together this mood board, I was able to refine like my North Star in a way of like, what is Trapjaw's body language? And so that helped me I took the ZBrush file, which is again, another great thing about working digital. The artist can give it to me, so I'm not making him what we call fish blindly. He's not like, well, where am I fishing? You know, it's like, let me help find a good spot where the fish are, and then you can attack it. So I took the model, reposed a little bit, got to a general idea. I broke everything, it looked horrible, but he's like, I see what you're going for now, and I agree, and he was able to tweak some things, make it look even better. So thanks for working with an awesome team member, we were able to get to, I believe, a better pose for Trapjaw. And you can see a little bit of like other things that evolved from the 2D art here as well. You can see a little bit more of the armor, you can see some of the nernies and stuff, and the mechanics inside the arm over here. But then also, I talked about earlier with like not wanting just his arm attachments like just on him, which I think is cool. Like I think that looks rad, but for him, I'm like something different. I like this Swiss Army knife, you know, arm idea. So Geo and I came up with the idea of him having like little tools on his belt instead to keep that silhouette and that idea there. So he has like a little like buzz saw. People call it a pizza cutter when they see it at the booth, and I hate them because that's all I can see now. So you're dead to me, whoever said that. But it's a really badass pizza cutter, so that's cool. He's got a little laser cutter, you know, you just think like, he needs tools. I know everyone, like a lot of people think of like Triclops as like the evil man-at-arms, but I think in my world of MOTU, this Legends universe, I think of Trapjaw as the evil man-at-arms. He's got cool armor, he's got mechanical stuff. In my brain, it's like he lost his arm somehow and he made his arm, and then so part of what's on the sculpt right here, you can kind of see, he has these ratchet straps. I thought that'd be a really cool way, so it looks like if he's a one-armed guy, he's putting his arm on me, he has this thing, he's just like, and just stays on. I'm like, that feels cool, and the sculptor was like, yeah, let's do that. So that's fun when you're all like spitballing, everyone's jamming on it. So, and I, just like MER-MAN, I wanted him to look deadly, not just because he has a sword or because he has a gun, but like, man, if I touch that guy, I'm dead. You know, he has sharp points everywhere on him. It might be a nightmare for us with production. We'll see how that goes. That's a challenge for another time. Just push that can down the road. And something that we haven't shown yet, but I'll talk through it too, is we always want to have a nod to like what we would do with the figure, and then also give people a little more of a classic taste too. So with this helmet, some people, you know, when you see it in person, there's a little bit more of a spike on his head instead of the normal ring. I love the idea of the ring, but it was for a toy, so it could zip line, and this trap jaw to me doesn't zip line by his head. So gave him a German spiked helmet kind of thing, guys. Love the idea if he's in a battle and he headbutts you, or he could stab you with his arm or shoulder or head, he'd bite you, you know? It's horrible. So he has that going on, but we want to do a classic head with the ring on it, a little bit different jaw, so people can, but it still works aesthetically, because that's important with the rest of the figure. So we're going to be including a swap out head, so people, just like with our TEELA figure, if they get a classic head, they get a little more ponytail modern head. So Trapjaw, we're working on an alternate head for him as well. But can't wait to get this guy done and painted. So at the booth, I'm dying on the inside that we can bring this bust here with us. He's also stuck in China. Oh, man, this China thing is killing me. But this is another, like, just blood, sweat, tears, lots of crying in the fetal position at the night. Am I doing this right? You know, working with the artist. Amazing artist. This is another one by Milkar Fong, who worked on the MER-MAN. He also did the little bat dragon, little minion. This is another difficult but hugely rewarding project where Skeletor is Skeletor. He is arguably, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that's like, oh, this character is more popular than Skeletor. In the He-Man universe, I think it's Skeletor. Villains are always visually cooler. You know, if you have Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader's cool. So, Skeletor, we want to make him awesome. We also wanted this to work with the original statue. So, the statue was made 5 years ago. There were certain decisions we made back then, and it's always great as an artist, sometimes, not always, sometimes great as an artist to revisit older work. So I worked on the original Skeletor with an awesome team back then, and now we can kind of look at it, post-mortem it, be like, we're just working on just the bust. How can we make this feel like it came from that statue, but it's still totally new on its own, and it holds up as a life-size bust? You know, some people think working digitally is great because once you make something, it can be any size. So a lie. Not true at all. I learned this the hard way at my first job at Gentle Giant. A digital sculptor was working on a Captain America 3 3/4 inch figure, his first digital file, his first digital project ever, and he made this awesome scale mail. We all know Captain America, hopefully. He has like cool little scales and stuff. He made this looking Captain America scale mail, and then we printed 3 3/4 inches. It looked just like sand. Didn't look like, you know, it's like, didn't hold up at all. So when things go smaller, you have to exaggerate features. You have to make the scales bigger. When you look at 1:1, if you take that 3 3/4 inch figure, blow it up, doesn't hold up. When you take something big, you go small, details get lost. So we want to take that 5th scale statue we made originally, blow it up, and then readdress everything. So we really reworked the armor. The original one, I screwed this up a little bit, but he didn't have his top mantle cover. It was a hectic time in my life, and I missed some key elements. And he had a, you know, we took a different take with it, with like the skull and crossbones instead of the typical jewel. Readdress that. So we were able to kind of like go back and look at things a little bit differently with fresh eyes. And so we try to apply all that to this project. So look at some of the turnarounds, since the piece is not physically here, which I wish it was, but the arm was probably the thing me and Amilcar spent the most time on. It wasn't, the face came pretty easy. It's like, make a cool looking skull that has some expression. Easy, you know? Armor, finding the layering, making sure the silhouette reads similar to the original Sideshow statue works. So if they have that, they have this. It's like, hey, these feel like they belong in the same universe. But there's this detail in the back of his armor mantle that we didn't know what to do with. It was kind of like a cool alien skull-looking thing. But 1:1, it's like, that's got to be something. Let's give that meaning. And so when I think of like the evolution of Skeletor, the many different versions of Skeletor across the years, there's an awesome Dragon Blaster Skeletor. So we worked in a dragon motif into that back thing. And also dragons, you know, good, bad dragons, but they're usually known, especially in this world, as destroyers, and Skeletor's the Lord of Destruction. So I was like, went full on Game of Thrones. I'm like, his house sigil's the dragon. Done. Canon. Moving forward. And we also want to find a way to incorporate him into Snake Mountain base and show that lava, that like crackling rock, make it look like it's just there and it's evil and it's cool without, again, making sure it holds up as a one-to-one, and that's all it's for. If this were scaled down, it wouldn't, like we might have to exaggerate some of the spikes and things like that. But the armor layering is crazy. The crown, thing is, like, that was fun figuring that out too. And then to show some close-ups, we want to do a removable hood. So I don't think anyone's going to really display their Skeletor hood off. It's like, maybe someone wants to customize and make it a life-size Scareglow bus. Now you can. Go for it. But it was fun to approach and think about how does a skull transition to the neck. That was a really fun one, especially in one-to-one. You can't really hide it. You have to kind of like figure something out and own it. And there was a previous one-to-one bus Pop Culture Shock did years ago where they definitely went a little more towards like the floating head with a little like less neck, kind of just floats there. We like the idea of like the melted head or some sort of disease or curse, like not sure what it is, want it to be a mystery, but what would that look like? And I'll show you in a sculpture picture next. And then a little bit closer look at the dragon motif on the back. We didn't want it to be super obvious. We look at a lot of armor reference. Sometimes we didn't want like jutting out either because it's the back of the bus, so we want to be able to sit without a lot more depth. So there's that. And then just some looks at the sculpture because this thing's so freaking cool. But we came up with like a cool like burned skin transition of skull to flesh. We didn't want it to look gross. That's a very important thing. Like gross is definitely an aesthetic for certain things. We wanted this to look cool. So I know that could be a weirdly subjective fine line to walk, but I think we hit a pretty good spot. And it's funny, we had a lot of discussion about them nipples. How much nipple, how pronounced are those nipples, how subtle are those nipples. A lot of nipple talk. It's a life-size bus. You can't like have no nipples, they gotta be there. It was fun. So, and then just some awesome photography. These are two of my favorite shots along with that first one, just like the undershot, but the photographer just killed this piece. Love it. So, what's after Skeletor? Hopefully, we're gonna make a He-Man bus next. So, this is another one that it was a little bit, quote unquote, easier to figure out Skeletor, a little bit more forgiving. Monsters are very forgiving. But how do you make Conan style inspired barbarian, meets handsome in a life-size bust? It's a lot easier when you're doing like a little statue and the head's this big, but like this is gonna be sitting on your like whatever display you have for it. How do you make sure that thing really sings and marries a lot of universes and styles and aesthetics together? Because everyone has strong opinions on their He-Man. So this is just like Skeletor. We want it to feel like it belongs with the original He-Man statue we made at Sideshow about 6 years ago. So we kept the Castle Grayskull inspired shoulder pad. I always think of like in my universe of He-Man, if he's like, I think Prince Adam's a weird thing. It's kind of like Superman with and without his glasses. It's like, that's Prince Adam, that's He-Man, duh. Like I want to go back to like the barbarian roots of him rescuing someone and being granted this magical armor. And I have ideas in my head about how that happens and, it having stages of evolution. But I thought because, he's granted this power of protection and, the power sword, he's like the protector of Castle Grayskull. So I thought like getting a cool skull motif in there and making it less bad and making it more of a neutral, like it's not good or bad, it is what it is. And so we're gonna work that in. And then we originally weren't going to do it, but just seeing it that way without the sword on his back, it felt a little naked, so we just threw on the sword handle. And we're not going to do the full sword because it would just be absolutely bonkers. So it's going to be a little bit cut off at the back, like where the sheath kind of is, but I think that helps balance the thing out a little bit more. So and then we have to find we spent a lot of time, and we're going to evolve it more in 3D to make sure it works with Skeletor, but like how do we make that cross work without it making it feel like a religious cross or the Iron Cross? Because, we want it to be like a graphic visual for He-Man, make it his own thing, like a jewel graphic design. And then making sure the harness works, make sure it looks like it's segmented, like, oh, that's something you could wear, and it flexes, it works with you, kind of like, inspiration for that is going to be like a watch, like, watch straps I think are really good for that. It looks like they could stretch a little bit, have some cool mechanics. So I'm excited to do that one. That's going to be our next life-size bus, hopefully. There's always things that can change because sometimes, we have the Skeletor bus and we have this, what I'm going to show next. You have another expensive He-Man item out. You don't want to have too many expensive He-Man items all at once, so you need to spread things out. To me, it was either him or Trap Jaw, but we're doing a, an expensive, awesome Trap Jaw, so it's like, can't have those too close to each other. So hopefully it's He-Man. Things might change, but that's where we're at with the life-size bust designs right now. So we wanted to really lock in the Legends look and aesthetic before we go back to the roots. And we really want to continue with the Tweeterhead's kind of known for 6-scale classic DC statues. That's what we did before He-Man. And so we wanted something that could work with that. And also, obviously, fans love, like a lot of people love what we've been doing with Legends, which is awesome. We love you guys for it. And some people really want classic He-Man. They want their toy come to life. So the first in this new classic 6-scale line is going to be He-Man on Battle Cat. I don't think it's ever been done in statue form. There's been He-Man and Battle Cat, but not He-Man on Battle Cat, launching into battle. So a huge piece of inspiration for me, besides all the awesome art I've grown up with, the comic, the cartoons, and everything, was seeing one of my favorite artists, Alex Ross, do this print. It was used for many covers for different comics and things, and it was in various books. I think the story behind this was originally commissioned for the 2000X comic, and then he just did it classic style. I'm like, can you do that 2000X style now? So this art existed, and it was awesome. We sold it as a print when I was at Sideshow. That's where I pulled this from. But I just love how this felt like the toys just come to life. Like when you're a kid and you're playing with the toys, this is like what's in your head. So we want to do this in statue form. So some turnarounds of the statue you guys are seeing at the booth. This is the exact same one that was printed and put at the booth. This is about 85% done sculpt. The sculptor's actually still currently working on it. We just need to get something printed. So I felt this is one you had to see in person. Photos can only do so much. I think they're more of a proof of concept this thing exists, but when you see it in person, you're like, that's what that is, Man, this thing really stole the show. Everyone that comes up to the booth is like, what is that? Just goes to it. So I want to kind of put him in the beginning of the, what is the story of this new line? What could be the centerpiece of this? And to me, it's him, Battle, Grayskull on part of the drawbridge. Some people have asked in person, I always love it when they do this, they notice where's the other side of it? I'm like, well, it'd be a huge base if it was a whole drawbridge, so we had to artistically find a way to make sure it doesn't cover the piece, doesn't get too big. So it's kind of half of the drawbridge. And then we found inspiration in some of the old Filmation art. I love how the crafts of Grayskull goes from rocks, that organic-y, rooty-looking rock stuff, so that's the base bottom. There's a couple of maybe tortured soul faces in there too, can keep it a little mysterious and creepy. But this is what the backside looks like. I know a lot of you guys can't see it there because it's displayed a certain way. But we really worked on this thing pretty closely with the sculptor to make sure it had, we did a rough maquette first, just he did the cat, the pose, the He-Man, super rough. I would go in there and play with it a little bit, find the proportion. You want to make sure it's not too much figure to base ratio. This thing has to balance. It's a production issue for down the line, but I think we have enough, hopefully it works out. We worked in to make sure we had enough base back here, if you guys can see where my cursor's on screen, to make sure that if we get a support rod, it goes all the way through that hind leg into that base. We have enough meaty base to make sure it doesn't tip over. We might stretch out this base a little bit more because the main center of mass is right here, but he has all this other cat right here too, so we might need to stretch this out a little bit more as we go to final, but plus or minus, it's about what you see out there. So we're still pushing some details, refining the hair, refining the anatomy a little bit more. If you like what's out there, hopefully you really like what we're doing with it. And some of you might not even notice a difference, and that's totally cool too, because sometimes I get updates from the artist, I'm like, what'd you even do with this thing? It's like, oh, I did this, 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 this. So that's where the future of where we're going to. It's not going to take anything away from our Legends line. It's just a way to kind of continue to make He-Man statues for the fans. And this wouldn't be possible without the awesome artists I work with. We have a core team, Milcar Fong, who I said worked on the Skeletor, the Minion, and the MER-MAN. Ariel Mora Remus, he worked on TEELA's base. He helped support on the He-Man Battle Cat base. He's awesome. Geo Nakpil worked on the Trap Jaw, and he worked on the rough maquette of the Beastman. He'll be working on that as well. Guillermo, he's freaking, I love this man. He worked on the classic He-Man on Battle Cat. He's responsible for a lot of the DC classic stuff we do as well, so those kind of will fit aesthetically together. Mike Falmer, who pulled off a miracle, and I took these rough 3D prints that we had and just threw them at him, and he just cleaned them up and painted them all gray. Those 3 pieces that are at the booth that are painted gray. Mike Falmer saved my butt with that thing. And I work with a bunch of badass freelancers. Want to give a shout out to all those guys. Alex Pasenko worked on the original line with me. Alejandro is an awesome sculptor. He worked on TEELA's props. Chris Guzman worked with Tim Gore on the Skeletor paint. David Fisher is another painter. He worked on the Minion. Dan Ulrich worked on the TEELA, helped me with like the pose, the anatomy, make sure it was a good balance of like feminine and badass. Igor Kato did some of the earlier stuff on TEELA to establish that. JP, I call him Jean-Paul Mavinga. I always screw that, but I call him JP. He's an amazing designer. I work with him very closely where I'll do rough 3D stuff and he goes in and he's one of the best illustrators that just tightens things up to the point where I'm like, what? I don't know how he thinks. He's just like an alien, I think. The Gucherek brothers, awesome team that lives on the East Coast. They did the rough trap jaw concept that you guys saw. Nate Barch, who worked on that rough MER-MAN, he works with me on a lot of stuff. I love that brother from another mother. And then Stepan Sevic, who I said helped start this whole freaking thing back with the He-Man design and the Skeletor design. So I really want to make sure, and Tim Gore, who I mentioned earlier, did the Skeletor bust paint. So couldn't do it without an awesome, awesome, awesome village, the support of Chad Colbank for hiring me at Tweeterhead to do what we do, and Mattel for being an awesome freaking licensor and partner for letting us play in this world and bring a little bit new of a fingerprint to this world as well. So yeah, that's my presentation. Thanks, guys. So Q&A, ask me anything. Already got a line going. Cool. If you guys don't want to get up too, you can. Oh, line's working great. So let's go.
Is the Hordak head that's on the exclusive blue Hordak the exact same head that's on the old exclusive
Man, you
gray?
start out rough. Coming and punching. It is the exact same head. That it probably won't fit because it's a slightly different production run. So it is the same sculpt. The paint will vary a little bit because we tweaked it a little bit to work with the blues. I think we made it a little bit brighter so it popped a little more. We want it to be a little more subdued. So it is the same sculpt. Slightly different paint, slightly different. So if you got the new exclusive variant and you have the original one, I don't think they would necessarily work as a swap out. I mean, anything's possible with some sandpaper, but and a drill bit or Dremel. But yeah, this shouldn't work. Okay. You started out hard, man.
And then one other comment, and I asked you this at the booth. It would be awesome if on the life-size busts we could actually take the armor off.
That won't happen. That's just a logistics nightmare. So, what was your name, man? Sorry.
Jason.
Jason? Cool. Thanks. Hey, man.
Hey, so I had a question.
Yeah.
You referenced the Pop Culture Shock life-size bust of Skeletor.
The Pop Culture Shock one? Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you've seen that lately. Once it's aged like 5 years or whatever, the hood looks terrible. I don't know if it's dust or just the hold up. How do you address that on the piece that you guys are putting out?
You guys are starting out hard. No fun questions yet. Fabric is definitely something you have to have good upkeep on. I'm not sure what the materials are on that one, but we work with a factory that does age testing. So they take the fabric that we're going to work with, throw it in a bucket of chemicals, which basically replicate aging. Obviously, sun will destroy anything if it's out in the sun, like if sun's hitting on too long. I don't know if dust really does damage to anything, but if it sits too long, certain materials will just get rigid, and if you try to move it, they'll flake. We're working very closely with the factory to make sure that the aging process holds up. So.
Okay, cool. Next problem I want to. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, what's your name?
Adam.
Adam, cool. Next problem, you guys. Jeez.
Hey there.
What's up, man? Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're not back. I mean, see you at the booth.
So my question is a lot less technical, but with the fact that you got the Minion out, it's a smaller item. Have you guys put any thought about doing like cowl, or I'd really love to see what you guys did with like Horde robots?
Oh yeah, dude. Anytime we can get a little animal in anything, I mean, we did a Green Lantern with not Chip, but Badge, the other lantern squirrel. Anytime I can get an animal, little buddy into something, I'm gonna do it. So, and Chad wants to too. So anytime we can do that, whether it's a small enough to be an exclusive or it's slightly bigger, and we can sell it as a cheaper pack-in, not pack-in, but cheaper proximity piece, we'll definitely do it. So.
And I'm probably talking on behalf of everyone that everyone wants a mid-transformation King Hiss.
Oh, yeah, King Hiss comes up a lot. I love the faction leaders, obviously. So I've gone through my head a million different times, how you would approach, how many swap outs, how much would you just keep mid-transformation. So it's on the mind, but he's not on the current immediate radar. Next couple of years, we have some other characters we have to get to first, but he's definitely on that. What's your name, man?
Rex.
Rex. That's a cool name. My parents just named me Dave. When they got mad at me, they called me David. You know?
Not that short.
Hello again.
Hi again.
What's your name again?
Caitlin.
Caitlin.
I was wondering if y'all were ever going to do like a Keldor or a Randor or Marlena statue?
Well, it was Keldor or who?
Or
Randor?
Marlena or like Randor?
So they're important characters of the universe for sure. You try and think of like when you do something, like if this is going to be $500, like how many people do we think would be willing to buy this? So I think Keldor would be a top pick. I think someone like King Randor would be up there too in terms of like the more normal human like secondary versions of characters or whatever. So never say no, but right now it's just not like on the immediate radar. But yeah, definitely always under consideration.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
No problem.
You're welcome. No, I'm kidding.
Hello.
No, it's cool.
I was curious about what materials you use to make the pieces, and do you cast them like in silicone or like?
Silicone, no, just because of like even the 1-to-1 bus. So what we work in, so we do digital. So we 3D print. It's usually plastic based, and then for the final production run, it's usually like some form of polyresin. Every factory kind of has its own like mixture, but it's always really heavy, really sturdy. Sometimes like MER-MAN, where they have really spindly parts, it might be a softer PU kind of a material, which is like a hybrid, so it has some flex and give. And then like the life-size Skeletor bus, he has the soft goods, hood, and cape, and then he also will probably be mostly fiberglass because a solid resin life-size bus would be like 10,000 pounds, and not even, Thor could pick it up, I guess. That's about it, yeah.
And the molds, what are they made from? Or do you?
So usually if you have like, so for toys, you use steel molds. That's why they're so expensive to make, because you have to, it's like $10,000 sometimes for like a small block of something. With this, it's usually a silicone-based mold. So because it's so plastics are soft, so you have a hard mold. So because this is a hard end material with resin, we have a soft mold. That way pieces give, because if you have hard, things would break when they're coming out. So it's like a silicone-based mold. So
Cool.
yeah.
Thanks a lot.
What's your name?
Wes.
Wes?
Yeah.
Cool. Is anyone curious why I'm asking names and writing down things?
Good afternoon. First of all, your work is outstanding. You're extremely talented.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I can't.
First of all, you're very talented. Your work is outstanding.
Oh, thank you, man. I heard your work is outstanding. I'll take it.
Outstanding, yeah. First, I've got two questions. First one is, how many hours do you spend working in one sculpture like the He-Man with the Battle Cat?
Do you mind coming up here a second?
Sorry.
That's cool. How many hours? Oh, how many hours or how many months?
Yeah,
for
months.
like a sculpture?
Yeah.
So they vary depending on how much I have my thoughts together and how much, so sometimes if it's not really thought out and we're kind of figuring it out as we go. I think Trapjaw we've been working on since January, so he's taken a long time, and part of that's because, again, the sculptor has a full-time job. So some projects can take as long as like a year and a half from initial idea to finished prototype, and some can come together, like the Minion came together in like 3 months from let's do that to it was painted, and that was awesome. So it totally varies based on how clear your vision is, the artists you work with, and approvals can sometimes hang it up a little bit because Mattel could be busy and they might have some feedback. There might be some back and forth to make sure we're on the same page, but so it can totally vary. So
May I ask you, what is the percentage averse to Mattel for the rights of doing those? Can you say that? Can you talk about it? Or?
Talk about what part about it?
The percentage, the percentages from the sale.
Oh, I can't really talk about the business sort of things too much. But it's usually the way it starts is you approach Mattel, hey, we're a company, we do this, we want to do this, and then they'll have certain requirements, and we have certain needs, and we're like, if all that makes sense, then you get a contract going, and you battle it out and make sure everyone's happy. So, yeah. What's your name, man?
Serge.
Sergio. Oh, Sergio. Awesome. Thanks so much, man. I'm sorry, dude. Two more questions? Cool. Sorry, everyone behind 2 more. Sorry, guys.
I'm Martin, David.
Oh, hey.
First off, I want to say I love your designs.
Thanks,
I love
man.
how you've taken, and you put it up there, and me and my buddies have always talked about it. It's like, man, if there was a live-action movie, I really hope they get these guys involved because they get it.
Yeah. Sign a petition. Get a petition going.
Get it. Yes.
David involved in the movie live-action show.
So I guess, and especially looking at the bases, you guys are really pushing those bases now with the creatures and everything. Is there ever a chance of you guys doing environment statues, like doing your version of Castle Grayskull or Crystal Castle or anything like that? Because I would love to see what you guys would come up with.
Maybe. There might have been one slide I was supposed to include. My boss is pretty upset that I didn't, so...
So we'll meet up after the panel. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. What's your name again, man?
Matt.
Matt?
Matt, yep.
Cool.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Last question. This better be a good one. You're like, why did the exclusive head come with... No.
Why did the exclusive head? No. But kind of actually tailing with what he said, especially when I saw your 1/6 line and what you're doing with that. Masters Universe has amazing vehicles, but nobody ever sculpts the vehicles. Have you guys thought about doing some statues that are vehicle-based?
That's something that's come up a few times. Like maybe we did like a smaller scale so the vehicles could be about the size of He-Man Battle Cat, but then the figures could actually fit in them. Vehicles are always harder because they're very technical, hard edge. When we work with silicone, like sculpting in silicone molds, hard surface stuff is a little bit more like unforgiving, at least with He-Man. If we designed it right, we could make that probably work. It's a little more friendly for like organic stuff. When you get into like really rigid, clean lines, you have to go to like steel tooling, and that gets really expensive. So anything's possible. It's a matter of like when, how, the cost, how many we think we can move. But I totally agree with you that vehicles are very much like huge character roles in that universe as well, and it'd be awesome to do some of them for sure.
All right, well, thanks and great work.
Yeah, what was your name, man?
Tom.
Tom?
Yep.
Sweet, man. All right, assigning random numbers, and someone throw a number out between 1 to 8. 6? Sergio, you win, sir. What did you win? You have to come by the booth because I forgot to bring it, but you get this thing. Yeah. That's enough. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you. Thank you so much for tolerating me. Yeah, totally. I forgot to bring it with me, but it's at the booth, so. Let's talk later. Sorry, man, I gotta go. I forget who's next, but guys, thank you so much for having me here, listening. Skinny arms. All right, guys, thank you so much. Come say hi at the booth. Me and Jeff May will be there for the rest of the day. If you didn't get to ask your questions, we'll be there, so you can harass me there.